Hi, we're here today with Cameron MacDonald from BLG. He's a partner over at the firm. He has a focus in securities law and has been very much involved in the esports space for the last little while. So welcome, Cameron.
Thanks, Philip. Thanks to you and to the CSC for having us. We're excited to be a part of this event today. And I co-chair our sports and gaming law group alongside Danny Copper, who's based at our Montreal office. And collectively, we have about 50 people across the country, across all disciplines, engaged in our sports and gaming group. So we love events like this, and we love to talk about all the exciting things that are happening in Canada right now. So thank you for having us.
All right, great. Well, let's get right into it. Let's talk about what Bill C-218 is.
Right. So Bill C-218, despite its funky name, is the culmination of multiple attempts dating back to 2012 to end what Canada has, this longstanding prohibition this country's had on legal event sports betting. The bill was introduced last year by Conservative MP Kevin Waugh. And what it essentially serves to do is amend and eliminate the restrictions on the Criminal Code of Canada that prohibit betting on the outcome of any race or fight or single event sports event or athletic contest. So up until this bill being passed, we just haven't been able to do that anywhere in the country legally. So although Canada has offered legal sports wagering for decades now, the Canadian lottery corporations have only been able to offer parlay wagering, which, although it's still popular, as opposed to betting on a certain sport or a certain event, you're betting on multiple events linked together, and usually you only kind of win if all of the bets come in the right way. So, through this prohibition that we've had for decades, we've seen billions of dollars being channeled to the gray market via illegal bookmaking operations and offshore online sports books. So that's significant revenue that as a country we could otherwise use to fund important public priorities. And just as I wrote down an estimate, but it's an estimate you'll see a lot in the media these days, and I think it's pretty accurate that around we're losing to offshore sites and illegal bookmakers about $14 billion in Canada annually. So, as we're all coming out of this pandemic, the importance of getting this bill passed was paramount and couldn't be understated. So we're all very excited that it has been passed, as I will get to later.
So what would you say is the overall market potential for single event sports betting in Canada?
Well, it's massive. So I guess for a few things, the legalization of single event sports betting, it's going to do many things for the country. It's going to allow provinces to provide competitive sports betting offerings and unlock that gray market capital I talked about earlier. It's going to support the 180,000 plus gaming industry jobs that we have across the country. And importantly, too, it's not like people haven't been putting bets through to date through these offshore sites. They have been doing that, but they've been doing it through kind of the gray market. So getting this bill passed and getting people through the legal channels is going to offer people a regulated marketplace with greater consumer protections and more responsible gambling programs. So I think from a consumer protection perspective, it's very important as well. So and I guess in terms of the market potential, if you look at the experience of our neighbors south of the border, in the 2.5 years since the PASPA decision came out in the States, and the PASPA decision, for those who aren't familiar with it, it declared the federal prohibition on sports betting unconstitutional. So since that time, 26 states have either launched legal sports betting or passed legislation for legal sports betting, and it's unlocked about $20 billion in the gray market in the US sports books in such a short period of time. So if we look at what people are estimating in Canada, a recent report from Deloitte estimates that the market for single event sports betting could grow to nearly $28 billion in Canada over the next 5 years, which is nearly 7 times the size of the current market. So, I mean, the potential for this sector is just massive. And I think it's an exciting time for all Canadians. And it kind of reminds me of a few years ago when we made the recreational use of cannabis legal federally in the country too, and that gave birth to a whole new sector. I think we're kind of standing at that same top of that mountain again with this exciting change coming.
Yeah. So what would you say has happened recently, and what's the next step for the bill?
Well, I mean, only good news to report. As mentioned, the MP Kevin Waugh introduced this last year, but on April 22nd of this year, the House of Commons passed the bill on its third reading. It then was introduced to the Senate, and on June 22nd, it was approved by the Senate on its third reading. And As recently as last night, it is now received royal assent and is now law. So really the only thing that we're waiting on is the Prime Minister and his cabinet to set a date for the law to come into force. So all good things are happening. I think there's a lot of excited people here, including all the major sports teams too, who will benefit from this coming into law.
And so from a provincial plan standpoint, how do you see that getting rolled out?
Well, I can't speak to every single province yet, because I think some of them are still kind of mulling it over. But I know in British Columbia and Alberta, they've both announced plans to implement single event sports betting as soon as Bill C-218 becomes law and gets brought into force. So in British Columbia, the province will be offering sports betting through playnow.com, which is its only regulated online gaming website. In Alberta, they'll be doing something similar through playalberta.com, which is its regulated gaming website. And in the Atlantic provinces, they've also mentioned a desire to implement single event sports betting within a few weeks of its legalization. But there they have the ALC, which governs New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, PEI, Newfoundland, and Labrador. So they need to get the ALC approval from each regulatory agency in each of those provinces before it rolls out. But I wouldn't expect there will be much delays there. And then for those who who are in Ontario, have been following what Ontario is doing, Ontario is doing something a little different from the other provinces insofar as it's going to permit private operators to come into the province and set up in its new competitive iGaming marketplace. So it's innovative, and we're all very excited by what Ontario is doing. And of course, with Bill C-218 now becoming law, single event sports betting will become a major part of this new iGaming marketplace for the Ontario government. But you can now have people, these offshore entities or US entities can come up now, register, and offer single event sports betting or iGaming more generally to Ontario residents without having to go through the provincial regulatory scheme. So it's what's happening in Ontario is very exciting as well. And I think Quebec is still to be determined, and we're watching that closely.
Okay. So here's the $1 million question. Where do you see the intersection of new gaming regulations across the esports sector?
That is the $1 million question. I think the bottom line is that we're going to see the continued kind of convergence of these two undeniable trends. And the first trend, of course, is to modernize Canada's gaming industry, much like the US has been doing. And that's, part of that modernization involves online offerings and increased consumer choice. And you pair that, and especially during the pandemic, people have been increasingly online and consuming these types of forms of entertainment online. So we have that paired with the fact that esports just continues to grow, its popularity continues to grow. So, I think we're only seeing convergence there. And in esports global gambling revenue, the last stat I looked at was set to double to US $14 billion in 2020 and has no signs of slowing down. So, as a result of that, I think it's undeniable. We expect to see provincial regulators and policymakers have to reckon with this momentum behind the sector and get on side with it. I'm not aware of any clear guidance currently in terms of how esports wagering will fit into Ontario's new competitive marketplace, because that's still very much unfolding, and we'll see over the course of the next few months how that all shakes down. But I would expect that we will see it fit into the overall regime, given its momentum and everybody's efforts currently to modernize the gaming marketplace in this country. So I think it portends well for the future integration of esports into gaming regimes. And we all find that integration very exciting, especially in Ontario, where you're seeing this competitive marketplace open up to private operators. I think there's a tremendous opportunity here for people to do some exciting stuff for consumers in this market.
All right, that's great. Thank you for your time, Cameron, and we look forward to hearing more from BLG. Thanks.
My pleasure. Thanks for having us.